If you try that, try to control our relationship or me or my actions, I think that will make that worse.
I can only imagine how expensive this boat ride is.
You can't imagine.
I kind of want to know right now. How?
With gamble.
He promises to quit gambling at night, then pays for a romantic boat ride with gambling money the next morning. And if that does not make your head spin, then you are not paying attention, because this is not a minor slip. This is emotional whiplash in real time. This is a man saying change is, coming while cashing in on the same habit he swore to leave behind, and somehow the sunset still looks magical enough for Laura to smile through it. You are watching a contradiction unfold on screen, and the scary part is not his behavior, it is her reaction to it. I am Olavia, and this is TLC Drama File Us, and if you are into real relationship psychology wrapped inside reality TV chaos, then make sure you subscribe, because we do not just recap, we connect the dots. And I want you to tell me in the comments right now, do you think Laura is in love, or is she in denial? Because this story is not about a boat ride, and it is not even about gambling. It is about something deeper. It is about a woman who says she wants security and protection, yet keeps leaning toward the same type of risk that once drained her bank account and broke her trust. And a man who seems to know exactly when to switch from defensive to charming to vulnerable in order to keep her emotionally hooked. So the real question that will follow us through this entire journey is simple and uncomfortable. Are we watching a love story grow, or are we watching a pattern repeat in slow motion? And if she says she wants safety, what choice will she make when safety and validation pull her in opposite directions next? Now pause the romance filter for a second and look at the numbers and habits we have already seen on screen, because feelings fade fast when receipts start stacking up. And the receipts here are not subtle, they are loud and consistent. He admits to being around $50,000 in debt. He admits he gambles daily, and we see him spending most of his time at a shisha cafe instead of holding a steady job, which is not a side detail, it is a lifestyle pattern that shapes everything else. Ask yourself something simple. If someone is carrying that level of debt and does not have stable income, what does that mean for the future? And more importantly, who absorbs the fallout if things collapse? Then add the Valentine's money to the mix, the money Laura sent him as a romantic gesture, which he gambled away. Not secretly discovered by rumor, but openly discussed on camera, and that moment matters, because it shows priority, and priorities do not lie. So what are we really looking at? Is gambling the villain here, or is it something else? Because gambling is the behavior, but the bigger issue is control. Who controls the narrative? Who controls the accountability? Who controls the emotional temperature in the relationship? And every time Laura raises a concern, the focus shifts from his choices to her reaction, from his debt to her tone, from his habits to her so-called pressure. That is not random, that is a pattern. And here's the part that should make you uneasy. These are the red flags she already knows about. The debt, the gambling, the job situation, the Valentine's money, and she is still sitting on that boat smiling. So if this is what she knows now, what does she still not know? Before anyone rushes to judge Laura, slow down and remember where she is coming from. Because she did not walk into this relationship as a blank slate, she walked in carrying history. And that history includes a marriage that ended with her husband draining their joint bank account and leaving her for someone else, which is not a small betrayal. That is financial and emotional shock wrapped into one exit. When someone you trusted empties your account and your life at the same time, it leaves a mark. And she says it left her guarded, she says it made her defensive, she says she built walls so she would not be blindsided again, and on paper that makes sense. But here's where the contradiction creeps in quietly, because being guarded usually looks like slow trust, careful vetting, firm boundaries, and yet what we are watching feels different. She moves quickly, she rationalizes fast, she absorbs new red flags and then talks herself into staying, and that is not an accusation, it is an observation. And if you are honest with yourself, you have probably seen this pattern before, maybe in your own life, maybe in someone close to you, where the mind says never again, but the heart says this time is different. And sometimes we do not repeat the past because we are careless, we repeat it because we are trying to fix it with a better ending. So the question becomes uncomfortable but necessary. Is Laura protecting herself the way she believes she is, or is she rewriting the story in her head, convincing herself that this version will not hurt the way the last one did? Listen closely to the language he uses when Laura raises concerns, because this is where the dynamic dynamic shifts from messy to strategic. She is not screaming. She is not attacking his character. She is reacting to information he admitted on camera: debt, daily gambling, no steady income. And when she tries to process that out loud, his response is not reassurance rooted in action. It is a warning about control. He says if she tries to control him or his actions, it will make things worse. And notice how subtle that move is, because the conversation quietly changes shape. The issue started with his behavior, his debt, his gambling, his lifestyle, but now the spotlight turns toward her tone, her questions, her boundaries, and suddenly accountability sounds like domination, and concern sounds like suffocation, and that is not a personal attack on him. It is a pattern we have all seen before, where someone reframes basic responsibility as an attempt to cage them, which makes the other person hesitate to speak up again. And once you see it, the loop becomes obvious. Exposure happens first. A new red flag comes out, like the debt or the Valentine's money. Alarm follows. Laura reacts. She expresses doubt. She asks hard questions. Shutdown enters next. He talks about destiny, about not being changed, about accepting him as he is. Then romance slides in smoothly, soft tone, affectionate gestures, a reminder of love. Promise lands right after: I will try to stop gambling, I will do better, I will be perfect for you. Reset completes the cycle, tension dissolves, she relaxes, the relationship feels restored. It is almost efficient in how clean the sequence runs, and if you blink, you miss how fast the original issue disappears. There is a strange kind of humor in how predictable the rhythm becomes, because every time Laura tightens the grip on logic, something emotional loosens it again, and the conversation never quite returns to the core problem. It just drifts into reassurance and feelings. But here is where timing matters, because promises sound beautiful in the moment, especially when they come wrapped in affection and vulnerability, and the real test is not what he says under pressure. The real test is what he does when the pressure fades. So what happens when that promise to stop gambling collapses in less than 12 hours? The marina looks like a postcard. Water calm, sky glowing, wine in hand, his voice softer, her shoulders relaxed, and for a moment, all the noise from the hotel room the night before fades into background music, because romance has a way of turning even the most inconvenient facts into small, blurry details at the edge of the frame. He is attentive, he is smiling, he is setting the scene, and Laura is glowing in a way that tells you she wants this to be real so badly that logic does not even get invited on the boat. The debt feels distant. The shisha cafe routine feels irrelevant. The promise from last night feels intact because the mood says so. This is where emotional highs become dangerous, not because romance is bad, but because timing matters. And the timing here is surgical. He had just promised to stop gambling less than a day ago. That promise was still warm. And now comes the question that slices through the sunset. How much did this cost? She asks it lightly, almost playfully. But the answer is not playful. It was funded by gambling money. Let that land. The same habit that shook her trust is now financing the very gesture that is supposed to rebuild it. And instead of recoil, there is laughter. Instead of boundary, there is acceptance. The mood wins. This is not about a boat ride anymore. This is about currency. And I do not mean dollars. I mean emotional currency. He creates tension. He offers romance. He collects forgiveness. That is the exchange rate. Love starts functioning like a payment plan for danger. A sweet moment offsets a serious risk. A sunset covers a warning sign. A kiss neutralizes a question. And here's the spike in intensity you cannot ignore. The promise did not fail months later. It failed almost immediately, which means the words were easy. The behavior was not. So ask yourself this without excuses. If the date is paid with risk, who pays later? Then the tone shifts again. The charm softens, the smile fades, and he starts talking about the injury, a career-ending moment, a hospital bed, a girlfriend who ended things by text while he was recovering. No visit, no call. Then he adds that no family or friends came to see him during that period. And if that version of events is accurate, that is brutal. Physical loss, emotional abandonment, isolation stacked on top of humiliation. Anyone would carry scars from that. And this is where the story gets complicated, because pain does not make someone evil. Pain explains behavior. It does not excuse it. You can feel the atmosphere change on that boat. Laura is not listening to a gambler now. She is listening to a wounded man. And wounded stories have power. They trigger empathy. They lower defenses. They create connection. You start thinking less about debt and more about damage, less about accountability and more about understanding. But pause for a second. Even if every word he says is true, even if the breakup was cold, even if the hospital room was empty, does that automatically justify daily gambling, secrecy, and financial risk? Or does it simply explain how he became who he is? Those are two different things, because a hard past can build compassion. It should not erase responsibility. Yet notice how smoothly the focus moves, from his promise to his trauma, from her concerns to his suffering. Sympathy is rising in the room, and when sympathy rises, judgment tends to soften. So the question now is not whether his story is sad. The question is whether that sadness is changing the standards Laura sets for him. Then she says the line that changes everything. He makes her feel special. He makes her feel important. And suddenly the debt shrinks in emotional size, the gambling becomes background noise, and the fear that kept her guarded starts dissolving under the glow of being chosen. This is the core. Not the boat, not the promise, not even the injury story. The core is validation. Laura has spoken openly about losing a significant amount of weight. She has lived through a marriage where her husband drained their joint account and walked away. She has experienced rejection. So when someone looks at her and says, "You make me feel alive, you are the reason I am different now," that hits deeper than any spreadsheet ever could. That touches identity. And when identity feels affirmed, risk feels smaller. It is not about intelligence. It is not about ignorance. It is about hunger. The hunger to matter. The hunger to be picked first. The hunger to feel like someone's priority after being someone's afterthought. And if you are honest, you have felt that pull before. When someone's attention feels like oxygen, when red flags feel negotiable because the emotional reward feels rare. This is where logic loses its edge. Financial fear competes with emotional fulfillment. Safety competes with significance. And in this moment, significance is winning. She says she wants security. She says she wants protection. But when given the choice between feeling safe and feeling essential, her actions show which one carries more weight. And that takes us right back to the contradiction we started with. The promise to change made at night, and the gamble-funded romance the very next morning. Now step back and watch the pattern without emotion attached. Because when you line the moments up in order, the structure becomes almost mechanical. A red flag appears, she reacts with concern, he shifts the frame, either by talking about destiny or by warning against control. Tension rises. Then comes affection, a promise, a romantic gesture, vulnerability, and suddenly the pressure drops, the original issue fades, and they reset like nothing happened. It is not random chaos. It is a loop. Promise follows conflict. Romance follows doubt. Vulnerability follows skepticism. Minimization follows exposure. And each piece supports the next, locking together in a way that makes leaving feel harder than staying. But the stakes here are not abstract. This is not just about feelings on a boat in Turkey. There is talk of immigration. There is the possibility of shared finances. In the United States, a spouse can become financially responsible for certain obligations. Debt does not disappear because the scenery changes. Addiction does not dissolve at the airport. So when you combine emotional attachment with legal and financial commitment, the loop stops being romantic drama and starts becoming long-term risk. Right now, the glow of affection is strong enough to blur the edges. The promises still sound sincere. The vulnerability still feels raw. The sunset still softens everything. But cycles do not vanish. They repeat. And the real question waiting ahead is simple and heavy at the same time. What happens when the honeymoon glow fades and there is no boat ride left to smooth things over? Now let's challenge ourselves for a second, because it is easy to frame this as a clean villain and victim story, and life rarely fits that neatly. So what if he is sincere? What if he does love her? What if addiction and trauma sit next to real feelings instead of replacing them? What if the injury, the abandonment, the isolation shaped him in ways that made gambling a coping mechanism rather than a scheme? That possibility deserves space. People are not one-dimensional. Someone can feel deeply and still make destructive choices. Someone can mean what they say in the moment and still fail the next morning. Love and dysfunction are not opposites. They often coexist. But sincerity is not measured by speeches. It is measured by patterns. So we go back to what we have seen on screen. He admits daily gambling. He carries major debt. He gambled away money she sent as a gift. He promises to stop. He funds romance with gambling money hours later. These are not rumors. These are aired moments. If he is sincere, then the behavior behavior has to shift over time. If the pattern continues unchanged, then intention becomes irrelevant. And this is where the emotional conflict tightens, because Laura is responding to how he makes her feel, while the numbers and habits tell a different story. She is reacting to affection. The facts are reacting to arithmetic. And here is the uncomfortable truth that does not care about chemistry or sunsets. Love might be present, trauma might be real, intentions might be honest, but debt still exists, addiction still costs, promises still require follow through. Love does not erase math. Now let's challenge ourselves for a second, because it is easy to frame this as a clean villain and victim story, and life rarely fits that neatly. So what if he is sincere? What if he does love her? What if addiction and trauma sit next to real feelings instead of replacing them? What if the injury, the abandonment, the isolation shaped him in ways that made gambling a coping mechanism rather than a scheme? That possibility deserves space. People are not one-dimensional. Someone can feel deeply and still make destructive choices. Someone can mean what they say in the moment and still fail the next morning. Love and dysfunction are not opposites. They often coexist. But sincerity is not measured by speeches. It is measured by patterns. So we go back to what we have seen on screen. He admits daily gambling. He carries major debt. He gambled away money she sent as a gift. He promises to stop. He funds romance with gambling money hours later. These are not rumors. These are aired moments. If he is sincere, then the behavior has to shift over time. If the pattern continues unchanged, then intention becomes irrelevant. And this is where the emotional conflict tightens, because Laura is responding to how he makes her feel, while the numbers and habits tell a different story. She is reacting to affection. The facts are reacting to arithmetic. And here is the uncomfortable truth that does not care about chemistry or sunset. Love might be present. Trauma might be real. Intentions might be honest. But debt still exists. Addiction still costs. Promises still require follow through. Love does not erase math.